Hi and welcome. So yesterday we reviewed how we add and subtract mixed numbers. So I put a couple problems up on the board and I asked you to try them out. The first problem was 4 1/5 plus 3 7/9. When we did this problem, our first step was to find the least common denominator. The least common denominator, the least common multiple or denominator is what? You should have gotten 45. Okay, so 45. Okay. And now that we have our new denominators, we need to figure out our numerators. Okay. So how did we go from 9 to 45 using multiplication? We times it by 5. And what we do to the denominator, we must also do to the numerator. So 7 times 5, we get 35. What about this one? 5 times 9 equals 45. Therefore, our new numerator is 9 up here. We now have two new fractions. Let's add them. So 9 45ths plus 35 45ths. What did we get? So 9 plus 35. We should have gotten 44 45ths. Okay. It is not improper. We use the least common denominator. We might have to reduce, but here we do not reduce. 4 plus 3, 7. We must never forget the whole numbers. Okay. And your answer was 7 44 45ths. How many of us got that right? Good. Okay. Number 2. 5 2/3 minus 3 1/2. Again, first step is to find that common denominator, which was, good, it was 6. 6 was the common denominator. So now let's find our numerators. How did we go from 2 to 6 using multiplication? Times it by 3. And what we do to the bottom, we must also do to the top. So 1 times 3 is 3. This one, what do we do? Good, times it by 2. And what we do to the bottom, we do to the top, and we get 4. Good. So let's subtract. 4 6 minus 3 6 to get 1/6 is correct. And we must never forget the whole numbers. 5 minus 3, 2. Your answer was 2 1/6. Easy peasy? Good. Today, what we are going to do is we're going to start talking about how we multiply. So multiplying mixed numbers. We've reviewed about our regular fractions. We've talked about adding and subtracting mixed numbers. Now we're going to multiply mixed numbers. So multiplying mixed numbers. Okay. So when we are multiplying mixed numbers, boys and girls, I went ahead and I put it in a step-by-step process for us. So step 1. Step 1 is to write each number as a fraction. Okay. So what is a fraction? What does it look like? Can anybody give me an example? A fraction is where we have a number in the numerator over a number in the denominator. This is the fraction form that we are looking for. So when we have an example of 1 2/3 times 4 1/5, our step 1 is to change these mixed numbers into fractions. Okay, so we're going to change these into fractions. Now, how do we do that? Who remembers? We reviewed it. Good. Okay, so we're going to go clockwise here. We're going to multiply and then add. So 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2 is 5, and the denominator stays the same. And we'll do that to both of them because we need only fractions. So 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 is 21 over 5. Okay? That is step 1. We are done with that. Step 2, oops, sorry about that. Step 2 in this process is to cross cancel. Okay, so what is cross canceling? Cross canceling is when we divide a number in the numerator, so a number on top, and a number in the denominator, by their GCF. So greatest common factor comes in play here. Okay. What else do we call this when we're dealing with fractions? We also call this reducing. Okay, so this is the part in which we're going to reduce the numbers so we're not having big numbers that we have to deal with as products. Okay, so after we do all the multiplication. So we're going to reduce. This is the part in which we reduce. So over here in our example, right now we have 5/3 times 21/5. Okay? That's step 1. Now in step 2, we're going to ask ourselves what two numbers, one from the top or one in the numerator and one in the denominator, can we reduce? Okay. We can reduce the 5 in the numerator and the 5 in the denominator. Think of it this way, 5 over 5. Well, 5 divided by 5, that's going to equal 1. So what are we really doing? We're dividing them by 5. Because 5 is their greatest common factor. Well, 5 divided by 5 is 1, and I normally bubble in the new numbers. And then this 5 divided by 5 is also 1. And then if we look at it again, we notice that in the numerator here I have a 21, and then here we have a 3. Well, they have a greatest common factor as well that's not equal to 1. So I'm going to use that. The greatest common factor here is 3. Good. So we're going to divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 equals 1, and 21 divided by 3 equals 7. Now we take a look at our numbers, and we realize that all the rest of them are either 1 or prime numbers. We know we're good. If you see that the greatest common factor is 1, you are done. You may not have to reduce all the time. In this case, we had to reduce 2 times. Okay? Now we move on to our next step. We are done reducing. We have our new low numbers. They're either a 1 or a prime. Step 3, when we are multiplying mixed numbers, is to simply multiply straight across. So what does this mean? This means that right now we have a numerator over a denominator times a numerator over a denominator. Okay? Some numbers are filled in here. So we're going to say this number times this numerator equals our answer's numerator. Okay. And then this denominator times this denominator equals this denominator, the answer. Okay. So we're going to end up with a new fraction as our answer after we multiply. So let's try this in our example. But let's think about what's left here. I see a 1 in this spot, a 1 down below, and then we're still multiplying by a 7 up top now and a 1 up top now. Okay? Our numbers changed from what they were originally because we reduced. So now we're going to multiply straight across. 1 times 7 equals 7, and 1 times 1 equals 1. This is our new answer. Okay? So we did the multiplication. Step 4 then, our very last step, is to make sure that we simplify. Okay? A couple things could happen here. In this case, we see that we have 7 over 1. Now hopefully most of us realize that 7 divided by 1 is just 7, and 7 becomes our final answer for everything. What is this called? What kind of fraction was this called? That's called an improper fraction. So you might have an improper fraction. If you have an improper fraction, you have to change it to a mixed number or a whole number based upon what it is. So an improper fraction must be changed, must be converted to mixed. So an improper fraction must be converted to a mixed number or whole number in this case. Okay? Well, this example was 7 over 1. Okay, 7 firsts, which became 7. Now, why did we get that? How did we get that? When we have an improper fraction, how do we convert it to a mixed number? This was in our review a day or two ago. Remember, we take the numerator divided by the denominator. Numerator divided by the denominator. So our one example was 7 over 1. So let's take 7 divided by 1. How many times does 1 go into 7? 7 times. 1 times 7 is 7. We subtract and we don't have any remainder. So that is our answer right there, 7. If we had, for example, 13 fifths, we would do the same process. The numerator, 13, divided by 5, the denominator. Okay? So this is another example. How many times does 5 go into 13? Well, that's 2. We subtract, and we get 3 left over. How do we write this as a mixed number? Remember, we start at the top. That's our whole number, 2. And then we go clockwise, 3 fifths. So 2 and 3 fifths would be the answer for this example. Okay? So step 4 is to simplify. And by simplify, we may have to change an improper fraction to a mixed number by division. Okay? Are there any questions? Good. We're going to go ahead and practice some.